Appreciate your interest in this webinar and in GrowthZone. Hopefully you'll learn a lot about networking practices from Cathi. We know she's a membership development expert, so we're excited to hear from her today. Cathi is the president at Hight Performance Group, an organizational development firm that helps develop healthy organizations to manage constant change, enhance customer loyalty, and work smarter, not harder. Cathi has over 25 years of experience in performance improvement, strategic planning, board development, and membership development. Welcome, Cathi. We're happy to have you here today.
Right. Well, let me just turn on my video. I appreciate that. I'm sorry to hear about the chat. I'm wondering if there a Q&A feature that people might be able to post a question there. Maybe that's something you can kind of look at when I start talking and getting into the slides, because I know we would love to take questions and hear comments. And so perhaps we can kind of find another way of doing that. Worst case scenario, I'll leave my contact information at the end, and hopefully you can reach out, but it really would be nice, I think, to be able to kind of see what you're thinking and hear what you want to know. If you've got some other examples, I know we can learn a lot from each other as well. So, all right. Thank you very much. And I'm going to advance the slides. And Amy, I just want to thank GrowthZone for hosting the webinar. I'm really happy to do it. I know a lot of people that use the association management system. So it's great. And I know we've got a slide at the end where we'll talk a little bit more about GrowthZone. So thank you for doing that. And we've got more people coming in, which is great. And that could continue, but I'm going to go ahead and move on because we have such a short window to be together. So our topic is networking 4.0. And my hope is that this will help you to rethink and reinvent that art of connection. I appreciate the intro. There's more information about me here on this bio. I'm happy to be here. And if I've got any IOM people attending, thank you for your investment in professional development. And hopefully I will see you at the next one, which will be in Tucson in the wintertime. All right. So in this webinar, we're going to kind of, hopefully you'll have 3 takeaways. How old school networking is dead and why I think your programs need an overhaul. We're going to talk about meaningful engagement and what matters most for members. And I'm going to encourage you to help members learn how to network on purpose and stop chasing unicorns and build relationship assets. So we'll talk a little bit about each of these things. So, we know a lot of people say they join because of networking. And yet, when we talk to members who might have come to some networking events, they'll say it's not really working so well for them. The other thing I think we're noticing after COVID is I think that people are kind of reevaluating where they want to spend that time. And so are we going to see those people come back for networking? We'll talk a little bit about that too. So why is networking not working for a lot of members? And I have to tell you that I'm one of those members. I've been, I've worked for a chamber. I have served on the board and chaired committees for chambers where I've lived. And I still really don't love networking as much. One, I think it's because I'm kind of what they call a social introvert. That kind of surprises people. I typically don't enjoy networking events when there's a lot of people and a lot of people I don't know. And I know I'm not alone when I say that. So I'm going to kind of have my hat on. I'm also, a member of TSAE, Texas Society of Association Executives. So I'm going to kind of put that out there that, yes, I'm a member, but I'm also an association consultant, right? And I get a chance to with a lot of members from associations all over North America. So I know I'm not alone when I talk about that. So we're going to kind of get into that and why it's not working for so many members. So I probably could wear that name tag at some of those networking events. So let's talk a little bit about that and why some members feel that way. So why is networking not working for some people, right? Well, for a number of different reasons. I think there's a lot of pitches rather than dialogues, right? So, what do I mean? People come prepared with their elevator pitch, and I know we teach that to people. We say, well, you need to have something to say in 30 seconds or less, right? And so it kind of has this sometimes a salesy sort of aspect to that. I know a lot of members have mentioned this, and I feel this sometimes a lot too. There seems to be this need, right? Like you've got people who are looking to make some quick sales or appointments, right? And it can kind of come across sort of feeling as if you're just kind of bombarded with sort of a sales sort of a feel to it, which doesn't always feel that great. And sometimes it might actually make some members not come back. I've heard that from some corporate folks that have said, I don't enjoy going because, it's really hard. It's like, they just seem like they want to really set an appointment or just, have that sale. It just feels a little aggressive sometimes. And that kind of gets me into that next point about it just feels like a one night stand, instead of really the opportunity to build relationships. And I think that's what networking is supposed to do. It's supposed to help us meet people, right? And build relationships. And there are people that are there because that's what they want. And so when they feel like it's, hey, I just need something from you today, it doesn't always feel as if, they're really there to kind of invest in building that relationship. I do think that we've been conditioned, and sometimes we teach members that this is how you need to use this time, right? And so there's this conditional thing that we've been taught or told year after year about what networking is supposed to look like, rather than really talk about how networking is really supposed to be, inspired sharing, right? We're there to share. It's a place for abundance, right? But sometimes it kind of feels like it's a little more selfish. And so I think there's a big difference. And like I said, I don't think I'm alone. And I've seen some people comment about that they have heard that too, or maybe even felt that themselves when they go to networking events. Okay. So I saw this article online and it made me chuckle. And it's actually by the guy who started BNI. And he has this book, and his article talked about the top 10 signs that you're at an old school networking event. And I kind of chuckled because I thought, you know what? It's true, right? Everyone's there to sell something. No one's really there to buy something, right? We don't come for that mode to buy. And so it's just a little bit of a difference, right? Some people come for the food and come for the free drinks rather than just really being there for that networking. You see a lot of the same people over and over again. I've been doing interviews for a client, talking to members, and some people said, I kind of feel like it's a little cliquish, that they're the same people that always seem to be there. It kind of makes you wonder if there's a sense of ownership, like this is their event. And then the question is it welcoming for other people who maybe aren't those regulars? True, sometimes people don't come back. They have one experience or two experiences and they decide that that's not for them, right? Listening to all those elevator pitches that I know people have been practicing, but you kind of know when it's a pitch, right? And you start to feel like, here goes another pitch. I think it's true. I think a lot of people really don't know the difference between networking and building a network. And sometimes it's interesting that once the food or the drinks, aren't there, that you have some people that say, okay, time to move on. They kind of stop, they ate, they drank, and their evening's over. And you do give your card out. It's, you can be bombarded with some phone calls and emails after that. And sometimes at these events, everybody goes around the room, like if it's a coffee and connection type of thing, and everybody gets to do a 30-second networking. But if you think about it, That's a lot of elevator pitches. It takes up a good deal amount of the time, and not everybody wants to do that. I know it's great for the people that have that opportunity to have that 30-second pitch, and that's why they come. But when you think about the experience that it is for everybody else, even though it's nice to know who's in the room and what they do, it can kind of feel like that's, a good 20 or 30 minutes of the time that could have been built maybe to be used a little bit differently, right? And I thought that was the number 10. A little sounds like it's a little, negative, but yeah, you feel like a minnow surrounded by piranhas. But that's how it can feel sometimes, right? Harvard Business Review, and I've given you the link to this article because it's interesting. And this quote has been used a lot on the internet because it appeared in this article that networking is the unpleasant task of trading favors with strangers. Well, that's, I don't think, what networking is definitely intended to do, but that may be how some people are feeling. Okay. So it's time for Networking 4.0. And, I first did this webinar with Frank Kenny and Beth Bridges. I'm going to talk a little bit about her book. And we were just, we just kind of coined this phrase and we just said, gosh, we've got industry 4.0. Networking really needs a 4.0. And the industry 4.0 just comes it has to do with like industrial revolutions. We started off and then there was a new way of doing it and the new way of doing it. And so now we're on industry 4.0. And we said, we think that networking is a lot like that. Networking has been around for a long time, but it's probably ready for this new generation of networking. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that. So here's the definition. Here's my definition of networking 4.0. It really provides environments, right, that facilitate connections, which is what we all want, develop beneficial relationships so everyone benefits from it, and it creates the futures, right? So we have different motivations to engage, but it really creates the futures of those motivations to actually happen. So that's what we want the new version of networking to do. Okay. So goals, what kind of goals do we want to see for networking 4.0? Those environments that really encourage connections, that's what we want. We want definitely to try to get people connected, help them develop relationships that really are beneficial. It's a win-win. It's not just some people trying to get something and the other people don't feel like they're getting their interests met, right? I read about this book in an article. I thought it was interesting about connectional intelligence. Now, the book can be really deep and it really kind of gets into that, sometimes we're providing connections, we're being conveners, we're bringing people together to collaborate, to really solve some big issues in our industry or in our communities. So if you think about it, connectional intelligence can help improve lives. It can build beneficial communities or societies and create the futures we all want, right? So I kind of give you a link to that book. And I think ultimately networking is to help people build or enhance their networks. We all want good networks, but we always don't enjoy networking. And I think those are two different things, right? Yes, we want networks, but do we like networking? Well, we could if the networking actually helped us to build networks. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that, share some examples of what does that look like. And I want to show you 3 examples. And I know there are others. And if you have an event or something that you do that really falls under this umbrella, that really helps implement networking 4.0, I hope that you'll share that. And if there's a link to it, I know that a number of us would like to go and learn about it as well. Okay. So what does networking 4.0 usually look like? They're usually group activities that bring together people who have things in common. That could be their roles. So it's beyond them just being members. They have some things in common. Maybe they have, a similar role like CEOs, or they're all people whose job is running sales teams or marketing, it's just, they could all be executive directors, right? So they have something in common. Now, it's also possible, could be by size, but it could also be based on their interests. And that's what brings them all together. Sometimes it's a problem-solving discussion. There's a problem. There is something that's going on. We bring people together. They all care about that problem. They all want to address it. I remember once when there was a small chamber in Ohio, and they were taking on the opium crisis, right? And it had been going on for years, and they were trying to figure out, how are we going to address this? And they invited, people from social services, judicial, the police, churches, from the business community, from hospitals, mental health kinds of organizations, education. And they said, we have a problem and we need to talk about it, and we need to figure out what we're going to do. And there isn't one of us that's going to fix this problem. But collectively, we could probably come up with some solutions, but it's going to take all of us to be involved in it, right? So that's a great example. World Cafe gave you a link, is a format of these kinds of discussions, kind of round robin kinds of discussions where there's a question or an issue, and then people at that table actually get to talk about it and write down some potential ways to address it, some ideas. So it's kind of like a brainstorming session, but a little bit more structured with fewer people in a pod. But it's a great way of doing it if you haven't done that before. A team building activity, it could be a contest. I just saw there was a chamber in Louisiana that does something called Crave, and I guess it's a cooking contest. And you have teams, and they come together. You kind of seen that in chili cook-off, things like that. Yes, those kinds of activities are great because they bring people together, right? It could be experiential kinds of excursions. I'm going to show you an example of that, or they could just be some deep dive learning, a workshop, a think tank where we bring people together and everybody kind of builds off of each other and they're all there together, but it's to learn something, right? So let's talk about that. So the first one, and I don't think this was a pre-COVID event. I don't know whether or not it has come back. I didn't see it on their website, but this is the Austin Chamber. They wanted to put together a series that really helps small businesses. It was designed originally for 10 to 40 employees, but they didn't limit in terms of who came to the event. Started off wanting to do 6 of them over the course of a year. Topics were really focused on helping small businesses grow. So those that had that growth mindset, that they would put together an expert who would talk for about 30 minutes, and then everyone was sitting in a round table. And then they were going to have some questions to discuss at the roundtable that were about that topic. And then there was going to be a debriefing session, and then it was going to be followed by a reception. So there is networking. But what's different is it is just about this topic and just for the people that came. And depending on the topic, it would draw, 30 to 90 different people, which was pretty interesting. And I want to share with you a little video clip. And these are members talking about Power Up and why they liked this particular program.
The Gray Line led a really engaging conversation about changing demographics and how that's going to impact the future of work. And the small group setting really helped everyone get their ideas out and have a real conversation about these topics and give everyone a sense of what they can take back and actually have some action items on. Everyone was broadly aware of the topics and the trends we talked about, but everyone kind of had a different way of internalizing. Everyone brought their own experiences to it. And it was really interesting to hear how folks in a number of different types of positions took in the data and drew their conclusions to it.
Recession, the economy actually created over 16 million jobs, 16.5 million jobs.
All right. Right. So I was working with the team at the Austin Chamber when they created this program, and we really didn't know what the interest was going to be. We just knew that we had to go beyond networking. We had to start really thinking about helping small businesses solve their problems and to think about how to grow. Oh my gosh, 6 power ups turned into 10. They were all sponsored at $5,000 each, but it was amazing. The experts that we could pull together, and people really loved the most was the discussion among each other. There's as much to learn from each other as there is from the experts. And we found that the networking, the reception that followed was really interesting. It was just a carryover of the conversation. People got to know each other socially. You saw them trading business cards willingly, wanting to get together for coffee or things like that, because they all were there for the same reason. And it was about growth and how they could help each other. So program was a great success. I hope they bring it back post-COVID. But I know a lot of, organizations are kind of thinking about what they want to bring back and what that's going to look like. Let's stop this and let me talk about another organization. I do have an association example as well, but I really love, I think, the work that the Cincinnati Regional Chamber is doing. There are links on both of these images for you to go to their website, because they launched the Leadership Center, and it is a full suite of leadership programs. Power Squad really focused on helping women of color grow as leaders. They have a Women Excel, that's the WE programs. They also have Cincy Chat, which kind of brings these emerging leaders together to really kind of talk about the issues and what they want their community to look like. There's also, Cincy Next, and they're just bringing together CEOs with these emerging leaders. They have everything from a monthly format, which are like luncheons, to roundtables, to actual programs. And they started off like most organizations do, most chambers, with a civic leadership program. But that over 10 years has developed into a full suite of leadership programs. They pull from 15 counties for attendance. And there are multiple competing organizations in those 5 states. But it's amazing how they have focused on talent development and helping leaders from all experiences, from being brand new to a very well-seasoned leader. So I encourage you to check that out, because that's another way, right, developmentally, to put people together who learn and grow together over time. Not everybody's interested in a year-long program, but I love the fact that they really offer quite a few. And even though, yes, this is Cincinnati, they're pulling from 15 counties in multiple states. So it's covering more than just one city. Very well thought out, very well designed. So that's something you might want to check out. The other thing, and I'm going to this conference that's coming up next month, it's the Texas Society of Association Executives New Ideas Conference. And I love how they just really try purposely to build in some really effective types of networking opportunities, but it's not called that. And so the conference starts on Sunday at lunch, and then it's going to go until Tuesday. And they do have kind of a big opening party on Sunday night, but Monday after the session starting at 3:45 to 6, so it doesn't really get in to the dinner. They have multiple excursion opportunities. They're all experiential, and you have to sign up for them. And I'm only just showing you a few of them. I want to say there's something like 6 or 7, but it's really cool. But, doing something that's actually a kind of a community impact, opportunity for Connect for Kids, this mixology and mingle, doing the boards, bingo, and wine, I thought was really interesting. And I'm actually going to attend the wine and cheese pairing. So, the size is more limited. They're smaller. I think the Connect for Kids is probably a little bit larger audience. But, you don't have to do these with a conference. You can just do these to kind of bring together some groups of people. Why do you think meetups are so well attended and draw from people, which can be a competitor for ours, right? Because what they're doing is they're bringing people together who have like interests or who just want to hang out and do something fun. Not everything has to happen over an educational event. They'll probably have about 300 people at this, and not everybody will go to an excursion. And they do have an activity that's in the evening, that's a little later. But, hopefully this might inspire people who want to go to dinner together. I just think it's a great way of being creative and trying something new. Because remember, it's about creating environments for connection, helping people build meaningful, beneficial relationships between each other, and also, really provide that opportunity for them to get whatever that motivation is to engage. And there's lots of different ways of doing that. So we'll continue on. COVID was a black swan event. What's a black swan event? I think it's a tipping point, and I think it changes things going forward. And we know that. And I do think that COVID help to change those expectations for engagement. I think that this change was coming, but I think COVID accelerated it. Okay. So what's happened now is that there's this continuum of comfort for interaction, right? So I want you to think about that. What do I mean about that? Because, during COVID, we had opportunities for people to be online, right? Whether it was on Teams or Zoom or some other platform. And then we started to also bring back some of those in-person events, but not everybody is coming back to those events, right? And I really think that it's going to fall into three buckets. I think you're going to have people who are eager to socialize in person, and you're going to see a huge surge at some of those activities and events, and those people are just craving to have that attention. I think you're going to have some people that are going to prefer to really socialize more in a smaller setting, where maybe it's, I don't know, could be 10, 20, 40 people, but they may not be interested in coming to the big expo, or the big conference where there are hundreds or even 1,000 people, right? And I think you're going to have some people that are going to want to continue to socialize virtually, which means you have to provide opportunities along that continuum. I went to a conference in Minneapolis a couple of months ago. And what I appreciate about that was there were these wristbands. You had a red wristband, which, really said, hey, I'm into the 6 feet distance and no hugs. Okay. And the yellow was, I'm open but cautious, so if there's a lot of people around me, I might just put on my mask. And then green was bring it on, right? I want the hugs, handshakes, name it all. And I thought that was great because it was a way for people to communicate what that preference was. They even had tables that were really for those who, for the yellow, and for the people that were red, they just had seats that were just arbitrarily around the room that were kind of far apart from each other. So I know it sounds like it's extra planning, but I think being sensitive and recognizing that we're going to have this continuum for how long? Maybe for a while. And we may have some people that are going to pick and choose and decide, when they want to come to these events, depending on their comfort level, what's going on in this endemic stage, and just what their preference is for their time and how they want to interact. So let's talk a little bit about engagement from the members' perspectives. And over the last few years, I've been asking members through surveys about engagement and their preference. And hopefully from some of what I've gleaned, that might help you as you kind of think about asking members some similar questions. Now, this is a chamber survey. I get it. It doesn't mean that you can't do it if you're an association. I believe in benchmarking. I also believe that everything is about scale. Some things you can do big time with a lot of resources, like you could do interviews or focus groups. Surveys obviously provide you with a lot of scalability. So now they got about a 33% response rate on the survey, which is very, very high. So we just said, why are you personally engaged? Not why your company, not your employer. Why are you personally engaged? And you can just kind of create a list, and then there can also be a write-in opportunity. And I will tell you that I've done this for a number of organizations, including chambers. And it's interesting because not everything bubbles up to the top the same way. Okay. Yes, you're getting the slides and you'll also get the replay. I know that Amy's going to make those available to you. So access to the programs and activities, that was number one. But I have seen some other organizations where the top rated answer was to support the organization's mission. That was really interesting. Okay. So not always the same. So it's just interesting to ask them, now they can choose more than one, but you might limit them to just three, or you might just say one. But anyway, it's just really interesting. It is different with every organization, but I always enjoy kind of watching to see what does this organization's members tell you why they're personally engaged. Now, I will tell you that I think we could probably boil down the motivation to engage with a member-based organization into 4 motivations. Okay. And I put advance my career at the top. I know that that's not something that chambers often think about. I think associations do a great job of acknowledging that this is a very prominent motivation. They know it, which is why they invest so much in educational offerings, certifications, CEUs, because they're attracting that. The other reason why I put it on the top is because millennials represent 75% of today's workforce, and by 2030, it will be millennials and Gen Zs. And guess what they care about? Well, think about millennials. Right now, the oldest is 41. Okay. So you're talking about people who are between the ages of, 20, 22, 25 to 41. Of course, they want to advance their career. So we have the motivation on the left, and then a kind of a value proposition for you to kind of think about in the middle. So if you care about advancing your career, here you can explore options and employers in the area. What a great place to meet so many different employers because you have them as members. And here you're going to be able to build a network of peers and connections and grow as a leader, right? Influence the future, influence the industry, influence the community. Absolutely. Another huge driver, right? And so in that motivation, it's about exploring issues and initiatives and opportunities to lead, to really address what our biggest challenges are and look for solutions. And so here it's all about collaborating, right? To create positive outcomes. And there are people who are going to be members with you because they know that you're addressing those and they want to come to the table with other leaders and work together to solve those problems. Elevate our brand. Yes, these are people who, want that visibility and they want sponsorships, right? So about them, it's about opportunities, spotlight the organization. You do that. You provide those opportunities. So you need to be able to talk to that motivation, right? It's really about helping them connect with targeted audiences. Who do they want to get in front of? The reason why we had some great sponsors for Power Up Austin, because there were particular companies that said, I want to get in front of that audience, right? So it was a targeted opportunity for them to be that sponsor for that particular event. But it can also help you get in front of leaders or other influencers, depending on what you're looking for, okay? Or maybe they want to elevate their brand in the community and they really want to be a sponsor or have a booth or be at a job fair or something like that. That's another way you can do that. And of course, we have a lot of businesses, especially in the chamber space, they're members because they want to grow their business. That's great. By being a member, you're going to explore some low-cost visibility and networking opportunities. It doesn't cost a lot to engage. And we're also going to give you the frequency because you can't have something that just happens a couple times a year. You need really that ability, and we can help you do that. But you're also going to build a network of peers and experts and resources. Okay. Another good question to ask on a survey is, what does meaningful engagement look like for you through us? Okay. Because I've heard before on surveys where members said, it's just not meaningful to me. And after a while, I start wondering, well, what does that mean? What is meaningful engagement? What does that look like? There's a word cloud. But I want to say there was probably 150 open-ended responses. You had some people that said, not sure. I love using SurveyMonkey because I like color coding the responses into categories, right? So if they said something about develop business relationships or strategic networking, not just, I don't want to just meet everybody, I want to meet certain people. They talked about community impact or initiatives, right? I color coded that differently. And the nice thing about SurveyMonkey is you can look at the responses by the tags. These are all tags. And you can see where there seems to be an abundance of the same tag. That can tell you a lot because the words they use can be really different, but the intent is very similar. And it's a lot easier to kind of pull that out. Okay. What would increase your engagement? Now, I'll tell you too that that's going to change. Here, number one choice was, I'm fine. I'm as engaged as I want to be. But that's not always the case. In fact, the things that I probably hear the most are opportunities to engage with my people. And they get, real about the definition of what does it mean? What the surveys that I've done, and I do many, what is it that they are saying? And here's how they describe members as our customers. How do they describe meaningful engagement? Peer-to-peer interactions, okay? They want to connect and they want to build relationships. Okay, it kind of goes back to our networking 4.0. They want opportunities that really support, either small business or certain types of people. They want to help, kids or, kids in school, or it's something to do with, the community. So they're really talking about it. But, sometimes they have their own personal agenda. I need opportunities that turn into sales. I need to get in front of decision makers, right? So it's interesting for them to kind of really sort of tell you a little bit about that. There are those that really want to affect change in a positive way. And I think you're going to hear that a lot from millennials and Gen Zs who care much more about cause than they care about clubs. Some of them just say, information, timely, relevant, that would be important to me. I want you to be my source. Or they're looking for education. So, and these are not necessarily I guess they kind of are in ranking order. Based on what I heard, I would say it pretty much flows that way. Okay. So based on everything that we said, not only do we have to transition to Networking 4.0 as membership-based organizations, because we have to think about our programs, we have to think about what we offer and how does it really serve that continuum of comfort, right, for engagement, but also really hits to that Networking 4.0 and how we can make more people be successful in that motivation to engage with us. Because if they're getting what they want and it's working for them, they're going to come to those things and they're going to tell other people about it. And so it's just going to be a win-win, right? But some of our members have been used to networking their old-fashioned way, whether or not it's really been effective for them. So we do have to help them transition. Okay. I love Beth's book. There's a link to it. It's on Amazon. I don't get anything for promoting Beth, but I think she's smart. She understands it. I think her book, Networking on Purpose, really speaks to that, right? That members, not just members, but just anybody, if you want to network, you have to do it on purpose. You need to really understand what is it that you're wanting to get out of that opportunity to meet people, right? What are you looking for? Because if you're not clear about what that is, it's going to be kind of hard for you to get what you're looking for. So be clear yourself. Think about it. She also talks about, it's not about sales. It's about relationships. You need to think longer term and realize that this is an opportunity to build a network. And so I love the fact that she addresses that because I think more people need to understand the whole purpose of it. And even though it doesn't say Networking 4.0, I think her book really kind of resonates with where we're going. We also have to teach some of our members, stop chasing unicorns. What does that mean? It's a 1 in a million. I had a person tell me that, The best benefit I got from this organization is I met somebody at a networking event and they turned into $1 million customer. She sold promotional products. Well, you know what? They're not all going to be $1 million clients, right? And this isn't always the place to get a sale. Okay. I'm there because I'm looking for, a CEO from a large company that's going to buy from me. I'm looking for a contract. That's the unicorn, right? Stop chasing the unicorn. If you just relax, if you just do everything that we've been talking about, maybe the unicorn will appear, but not just because you're looking for that unicorn at a networking event. Okay. That it's about building a network. You'll have a lot of people that will say, I don't have time to network. Yes, that's true. We all don't have time to go to a meaningless networking event where we meet a lot of people and we come back to our office and we have the same problem that we had yesterday. You're right. We don't have time to go to something that doesn't necessarily help us do what we need to do in the long term. But we can help you build a network of relationships. There are experts that can help you. There are opportunities. There are people who can perhaps introduce you to the next person that you need to see. Great book I read before LinkedIn ever came out. But I think LinkedIn was designed around this book, and it's called Networlding. We all want to live in a net world, a world where we can talk to people about our long-term goals or what we're working on with the hope that someone will introduce us to the next bridge of who we need to know or where we need to be. And networking does that, which is why I love how it says there are first connection, second connection, third connection, because I do believe we're 6 degrees away, right, from what we need. So they need to understand it's about building a network and building a network and keeping that network, because people change, they move. They're not with those organizations anymore. They pass away. If you're a really successful person, there's a good chance you have a really strong and diverse network. Okay. But we also need to understand and leverage, and Beth talks about that. You got to leverage online networking too. Not everything needs to be face to face. You need to be able to use social media in an effective manner, in a polite way, so that you can be connected and you can kind of meet those intended people. If you say, hey, I'm working, with a church and we're trying to build wells in Nairobi, and we need more, we need more engineers and people who can help us build those wells. Who do you know? And they might say, you know what? I know someone. I'm going to make that introduction to you. That's a networlding interaction, by the way, but leveraging social media in a smart way, using social media to educate, to entertain, not necessarily to sell. Beth happens to be the chief connection, I want to say, officer for Blitzer. Blitzer is an online platform that kind of mixes you up, or you can customize it, and it puts you in front of people for 5 minutes or 10 minutes. It's all driven by algorithms. But, sometimes you can have more effective networking if you can leverage those algorithms and those online opportunities to meet a lot of people and never have to leave your home. So, sometimes that's a great supplement, or being on Zoom. And I've been on some connection types of things through organizations I'm a part of, where they've done a really great job with breakout rooms and really kind of helping people to leverage Zoom so that it's a much more meaningful experience and not just something you want to, not use your camera or tune out of, but to actually create engagement opportunities. Okay. So based on that, I'm kind of curious, what kinds of questions do you have based on what I've shared? And then I'm going to get into a summary and the closing slides. But I want to give you the opportunity. Do you have any questions or comments about the content? Was there a takeaway that you got? A question, something that I could clarify better? Or if you just want to do more sharing in terms of what you're already doing.
Hey,
I'm
Cathi,
glad to
it's
see
Amy
the
here.
engagement. Yes.
I did grab a couple questions that kind of got buried as people started networking in the chat.
Which is great.
Yes, it's awesome. So I tried to grab them before they got too buried. But So Melanie shared, I'm noticing these examples are localized to one city. I think this is when you were sharing some of the chamber examples. She said her association statewide in California, geography is always a challenge getting people together.
Yeah,
Do you have
and
any
same thing for
elaborate?
TSAE. TSAE is a state association. But of course, when I look at their website and I look at the different offerings that they do provide kind of sort of local opportunity. So they might do something in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, something in Austin. They might do something, down south, San Antonio area. But their conference is a statewide event. So they're a state organization. So I know it's a little bit more challenging, but I think they've done a nice job of really sort of looking for a balance. And of course, you have a bandwidth issue. You can't do everything in like in San Francisco or in LA or, et cetera. So kind of picking and choosing, but I think they do a nice job when they bring these statewide kind of folks together, but they also do some localized events as well. I think it'd be a little harder when you're a national event because then you have to sort of capitalize again on your larger events. But I think if you are doing things virtually, you can certainly create those opportunities as well.
Awesome. Kara asked, have you heard the idea of conversation menus and have they been successful?
That's probably not a bad idea. I think that is kind of similar. Like I belong to SHRM, which is the Society of Human Resource Management, and belong to the local chapter in Austin. And during COVID, they had some of these Zoom kind of get-togethers, and you got to pick right from a menu of the topic, and then based on that, you got put into that particular breakout room, but you also had the opportunity to kind of come together. So I do think that that's a way of doing it. I think TSAE's experiential excursions was also based on a menu and people got to choose. Yeah.
Any recommendations for incentives to fill out surveys? Members don't often take the time to fill these out. I know GrowthZone uses small increments of gift cards, Starbucks or Amazon. Do you have any other recommendations for
Yes,
incentives?
yeah. I'm working with one organization right now, and they're doing 100 Visa gift cards. But I will tell you that probably within the first few days of launching that survey, there were already 100 people that had taken it. So I do think incentives work great. I know like when gas prices were really high, I had some organizations that were offering $100 gas gift cards, so yes, that can happen. I even worked with one organization that through their city, they had, I don't know, kind of like these little $10 cards that could be used for any business downtown. And everyone who fully completed the survey, I think that's important for you to qualify, because although you don't want people to take, answer 3 questions and then jump out, but you had to complete the survey. Everyone who completed the survey had a gift card mailed to them, and I think the city was helping to do that. At the end of the survey, you had to provide your information. That makes people feel that, especially when you tell them that their information is confidential, and then there's a drawing, they want to know that the drawing in confidential, how does that work together? So I think letting them know that if they're interested in participating, they can fill out their contact information at the end of the survey. That kind of assures them that you're going to honor that confidentiality. And because I'm a third party who does the survey, I think it's important to protect that. I know sometimes people want to know who says what. I don't think that's important. The important thing is you get more people to take it and you really pay attention to what those key themes are.
Sure. What about recommendations for getting a boss, Chamber of Commerce executive director to see the value of staying away from planning old school networking events and going towards planning 4.0 networking events? It's a
Yeah,
generation
well,
thing, I think.
and maybe doing the survey will kind of give that boss some feedback. But if you kind of think about millennials and Gen Zs, yes, we all want to build connections, but I think the reality is that they're not all coming to that. In fact, if you just look at the percentage of your members who come to those old school events, you're probably going to find it's a really small percentage, right? It's kind of hard to argue when you are pulling in the audience, but when you realize you're missing the boat on more people being engaged. And we know engagement can be linked to retention, unless they're supporting your mission, or your initiatives. How do you get more members engaged? And I think 4.0 is what does it. I like that. Lisa, take your boss to a networking 4.0 event. Yeah, it feels different. It's a totally different experience. And I think when you have that comparison, there's a great book around innovation, and it's called The 10 Faces of Innovation. And it talks about 10 different kinds of people who are innovative or play a role in being innovative. And one of them is the architect. The architect just is an observer. Have that architect sort of just be an observer at a regular old school networking event versus a networking 4.0 event, even if it's not yours, and then come back with the insights. What did you notice different about the behaviors, right? And it just kind of watching what that interaction is. The anthropologist, which I think maybe your boss isn't, but the anthropologist kind of maintains that traditional historical knowledge to be able to go forward and decide what's worth keeping going forward. So I'd say the boss probably isn't the anthropologist. It's important to not throw everything out and kind of keep what's working, but you need both of those kinds of people for innovation.
And one last question here. Kathy asked, did you say it's important to not share the survey takers, keeping the results anonymous? Not necessarily the results. I think you mean the actual names of the people who are responding.
I do provide a list of who took the survey and in terms of the person and the company, but never who said what in a survey, right? So when you have the appendix of responses, I never share who says what, because people go, well, who said that about us, whatever. And we should just, without saying we know, follow up with them. And it's like, no, that you should never divulge. I think you can look at who took the survey, because you're looking for who's probably not engaged with you, who didn't respond. And also, if you're kind of trying to figure out what percentage of the companies, that are your members responded, because sometimes there's a difference between individuals and companies. You want to kind of get a good representation of both. But yeah, I would never link a response to a member ever.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. Anything else?
There is a comment from Fernando about LinkedIn being the best network for professionals. What topics would you suggest to respect so that we need to share and update information not considered rubbish? So not trying to get away from people selling things on LinkedIn.
Yeah, I know. I get a lot of that too. I am careful about connections when people say I do XYZ and I'd love to talk about this opportunity with you, and I'll just politely say I'm not interested, and I don't connect with them. I don't accept their invites, because that's if they're blatant to tell you that that's why they're doing it. That's not what we want. But I think, connecting with people, sharing an article of interest, or, just saying, hey, I'm just looking at who I haven't talked to in a while and love to just, get on the phone or have a cup of coffee. That's right. That's fine, because it's about building relationships. And that's what LinkedIn was originally designed for. However, we know that 95% of all recruiting happens on LinkedIn. And there is a sales version that you can buy that actually gives you the emails or contact information. And there are people that buy that. Absolutely. So we know it's being used for lots of different reasons. But I think, we can kind of train people a little bit about the kinds of connections we're looking for and who we're not looking for. So.
Right. I think, Marla, that answers your question. More ideas how to get people engaged in online forums. And she also asked about online meetings. When you're networking live in online meetings, is there a way to engage people, questions to ask?
Yeah, I think asking a question like, favorite dessert, or best movie that you've seen the last year, the whole idea is people are looking for commonalities, right? Just like I saw people saying, hey, I'm a millennial. Who else is a millennial? It's the same thing, right? People are looking for those opportunities to connect. And it's great that we have those initiators, but I think you can post a question and you can kind of generate that type of engagement. And the same thing when you've got meetings and you've got, to me, I think if you've got more than 8 or 10 people on a meeting. This is where having polls or a showing of hands or using breakout rooms is a great way to increase engagement, because it's too easy for people to check out when they know you're not paying attention to them. So.
All right. Well, we got about 5 minutes left, Cathi, so I'm not sure how much more you want to.
Well, I think if there's anybody else who's got a question, happy to take it. I'll just kind of go ahead and sum things up. Then we can, again, kind of continue to take some questions. Networking is important. I think it's important to most members, but it hasn't been working for many. So I think that's the point that we want to bring. And that I think COVID definitely amplified those expectations are. I think some people have sort of felt that way all along, but now we have this continuum of comfort. So we need to recognize that, be sensitive to that, and think about how we can design opportunities to really meet the needs along that continuum. And for some people, they have found that when they've done some things online, they've actually attracted people who don't normally come to things, or from a wider reach of an audience. Members want meaningful engagement. They've said that. And what's nice is that they're starting to explain or share examples or what they mean by that, which is great. So asking that kind of question on a survey can help you learn more about your members. Realize that if you have good results from a survey, you might get 20 to 35%, still the minority, right? We're not hearing from the majority of your members, but I do believe that what people tell you, there's a good chance that just as many people would have said that too if they had taken the survey. And then transition to networking 4.0. By providing some environments that really build networks and help members be successful, which is what they want. The question is, how do we sort of redesign that engagement that really brings 4.0 to the forefront for them? And I'll leave my contact information. You're going to get the slides. You will have the recording. I've got articles, blogs on my website, and you can contact me as well. So look forward to hearing from you. Reach out to me. And Amy, with just some final notes from GrowthZone. Thank you so much for offering the webinar. And it's been great seeing so many people engage.
Yes, thank you, Cathi. This was awesome. The networking that went on in the chat, all of your information. If anyone wants more information about GrowthZone, go to our website, request a demo. You might even get a gift card. We're happy to help out with
incentive.
Incentive that we just talked about. Have a great day, everyone. Thank you, Cathi.
Great. You're so welcome. Take care. Bye-bye.